Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Covenant Cast. I'm Zach.
And I'm Steven, and Zach just got back from Star Wars Celebration, so I'm going to talk to him all about that, which, of course, we'll talk about a number of other Star Wars games in the process. So if you're into Star Wars, stay tuned. All right, here we are. If it's your first time listening, welcome to the podcast. And if it's your 97th time listening, we love you. Thank you.
Almost 200.
Thanks for being here.
Where nothing spectacular is bound to happen.
200?
200. 100.
Oh, 200, right. Yeah. So, Zach, you went to Star Wars Celebration. That's in Chicago.
I did.
In Chicago this year. And I want to dive into that. I want to talk about that. Obviously, we haven't got a chance to catch up too much because you just got here today, and
That's
now
right.
we're recording the podcast.
I got back yesterday afternoon, and I'm still exhausted.
Yeah.
There's a lot that happened for both Star Wars and I think particularly Star Wars Tabletop universe had a lot of news coming out. FFG had a panel. They were selling for the first time at Celebration, and it was cool to see. They had a huge area for just demos and stuff. Mm-hmm. Next to their booth, and then they also had downstairs a big area for events and stuff. Probably the worst thing that happened regarding FFG there was that they didn't announce all that until like a week and a half beforehand.
Yeah.
So there was just a lot of people that, and the tournaments were like at weird times. I have no idea what happened at the tournaments.
You can't play a tournament at Star Wars Celebration, though, right?
6 hours of your time at Celebration is worth.
It's so much time and energy and money to get there. Like you don't just want to sit at a table there.
I think having like a handful of like meetups where it's like Destiny players Friday night at 6 p.m. we're gonna have a
couple
hangout.
hours, yeah.
But like 3 or 4 hours because there's that much going on, and I think that's one of the craziest parts. And FFG alluded to this in their panel a lot. We streamed it on our Facebook, but people kept asking. It's like, are we gonna see? They did an FAQ section, but it was like, are we going to see all the stuff that's being announced this weekend show up in your games? And it's like, of course.
Yeah, right.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, definitely.
But this was my third celebration. So the first one I went to was in Anaheim in 2015, and that was before Force Awakens came out. So that is what I thought Celebration was going to be like moving forward. And
right.
That actually was kind of the last of the like, I almost feel like, it's almost like if Adepticon currently, which is a convention we go to, it's a miniature focus in Chicago, grew to a Gen Con. Mm-hmm. That difference happened from 2015 to now.
Oh, so Celebration got way bigger. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so I went 2 years ago as well in Orlando, and even the difference between 2015 and 2017. 2017 was like hailed as like a mostly terrible experience for most people.
Oh, great!
Because
that's what you want on the rap sheet, right?
There was great there, but like part of the problem was that you have an organization and a team used to dealing with a certain size of an event, and then they just didn't measure themselves in terms of like how many tickets they sold. And in 2017, it sold out in like 3 or 4 months, and it was just way bigger, and the lines were way longer, and they weren't ready to handle it. This time went way smoother. That's the important thing here.
Good sign.
So, but yeah, it's a crazy experience because it's a lot like Gen Con for those who have gone, except for everything is Star Wars.
As you would expect, yeah.
And because it's all thematically linked, there's a few notable things, right? So at Gen Con, it's all linked by Tabletop. But still, there's like pockets, It's like I play Destiny and you play Warhammer Champions and so plays board games and then the RPG section. It's not as much separation as that, right? Because it's all Star Wars. So like the Episode 9 trailer drops as an example. First off, watching that trailer in a room with 8,000 people, I think provides a very different kind of experience.
It does. It undoubtedly does. And Jonathan was talking about this just the other day about, I was railing about how stand-up comedy isn't funny. Like, you get these random Netflix specials that come up and it's like, everybody's watching this. And I watch it and it's like, yeah, okay,
that's fine.
It's kind of funny, or it's just super crude and it's like, I don't get it. And he was saying that the difference between being in that room with a stand-up comic and watching it on TV is entirely different. It's like that contagious laughter effect and that contagious energy that really makes it a way more enjoyable, and so you understand it more when you're there. And I feel like watching that kind of a trailer with that amount of excitement put into a tiny space is palpable.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a good choice of words.
Yeah.
And it's really cool because I think one thing we've always known about Tabletop is there is something special that happens when you're sitting across from each other, when you're in the room together, when you're actually interacting with someone, right? As opposed to like playing a game on your phone or whatever. But the same thing holds true for this kind of stuff, right? Because like you have 8,000 people or so that watch a 45-minute panel, right, where all the main stars come out and the director comes out and Kathleen Kennedy comes out. Stephen Colbert was the host, right?
Yeah.
He's a big Star Wars fan, so he comes out and he's telling his Star Wars story. And, you know, for 45 minutes, they're basically talking about making this film and the challenges of being in the desert in Jordan and things they were looking at and the challenge, like how they, you know, essentially JJ talking about, I have to not only end this trilogy, but I have to end this 9-movie saga. So like it can't just end this trilogy. Like it's got to go bigger than that. And they're just kind of, you know, building it up and stuff. And
then there's the trailer.
And then it's like, boom, trailer. But then it's like, a spoiler alert for those that didn't watch it or aren't going to watch it. Like the Palpatine laugh happens.
Yeah.
Like it cuts to black. And Luke says, no one's ever really gone. And then he laughs.
I wasn't expecting that. I was actually quite pleased with that.
Yeah, that was the general feeling in the room as well. Like what happened, because they had the stream going, they cut to just the trailer, so you can't hear the audience reacting. But he laughs, and then the audience just erupts.
Yeah, good.
It just erupted, which was, because it shows, the scene right before that's where you see like Rey walking and they look at the Death Star remnants in the ocean. And then it cuts to black. No one's ever really gone. Laughter. And it's nuts.
It does seem. I want to dive into that fully because I have a couple of thoughts on that trailer and the Mandalorian as well. Before we do that, let's do a little housekeeping. We've got some news to get out there.
Sure.
First of all, a pretty cool thing happening: the Warhammer Champions, the City Championship event. That's what it's called, right?
It's I forget it may be a City Championship Series, which is they're essentially from now to Gen Con giving away $100,000 in cash prizes.
It's a totally different, and this is interesting because this is the direction that we've typically been going the opposite in terms of our own events and the way that we're doing organized play. But there is still a place for the very competitive type of event where if you want to come out and prove that you're the best at a game and be rewarded monetarily for doing so, go for it, right? I think those things can coexist, and where you place your emphasis is really just a matter of your local community and your own philosophy and how you want your store to be and act and whatnot.
Well, and I find it interesting, kind of their approach right now, because the third set just came out, and this is a game. If you've been following the podcast for a while, you know that we, from the beginning, were fascinated by and very interested in seeing be successful. Because they have this really interesting app, like that you can play on the app, right? And the physical cards are linked to the digital cards and stuff. And the set 2 was kind of rough, right?
Yeah, it was a classic set 2, especially for a new.
Even set 1. So you had the one thing that was very powerful.
Yeah.
And then set 2, now you have 2 things, but they're both just very powerful.
And set 2 was like we said, the classic designing a set before the game is out, which I feel like is what happened.
It's a shame that's how collectibles almost have to be made, because the print window on these things is 4, 5, 6 months, right? So if you release a game on day 1 in August, you kind of want the next set by October, November, and if you want to have it in time, you need to hit print before you even. Yeah. So they have to design the first couple sets blind without thousands of people playing. But at the same time, they announced this $100,000 tournament series, and it's important to know we're hosting one. It's June. Do we have that written down somewhere?
I got it.
I want to say it's June 22nd. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's June 22nd. Steven's going to look it up. But while they did that, I also recently saw the email. I've been at Celebration, so it's kind of foggy for me. But they launched the single-player mode campaign on the app.
Yeah, and that's important.
So I think what is most important about this, and kind of what we've just been arriving at for the past year or two of the podcast, is in the same way that, like, not every game I love, everyone's going to love. And games I don't love, it's possible that other people out there are really, really, really going to love them. But similarly, to me, there are people that want big tournaments with big prizes, and that's what they're all about. I just feel like for several decades now in the industry, led a lot by Magic, it was kind of seen as like tournaments and big prizes are what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Exclusively, and everything else was left out. And I really do think that it really just needs to be 5, 10, 15% of the things you're doing should be that, because that is going to appeal to a certain player, and it's going to keep things exciting and give people things to talk about. But 90% of players, myself included, for Champions, aren't going to win those big events, right?
Yeah.
They aren't ever going to. They might show up and they might play and they might win some cool stuff and it'll be fun, but like those decks are useful for talking about for players that don't get to play as much, to have deck lists to see, to be able to put together and be inspired and be excited about this game. So I'm super curious. Like it's kind of they were going this way, and they kind of turned this way.
Well, they're kind of doing the double prong too, because you got the single player campaign. That's a pretty cool kind of casual thing you do on your own, and then you've got. But I mean, if you're gonna get if you're looking for a boost of attention, it's very easy to get that with a big number and a dollar sign, right?
Yep.
So it is an easy way to do this. Is it sustainable? Is it the atmosphere that they want for this game?
Yeah.
And honestly, it fits Warhammer pretty well. I mean, this is like a pretty traditional kind of like grindy game, and it feels like it does have it's pretty nicely suited for a competitive environment.
Sure. And I do think, in that vein, it's like it is good for marketing purposes, right? Because at Gen Con, I think they're having a $20,000 tournament, and it's like I don't know what the other tournaments at Gen Con look like, but I doubt they're giving out $20,000.
Yeah.
So very quickly at Gen Con, I'm assuming we'll have a set in or around that time frame, right? That's the 1 year anniversary of the game coming out. So it could be just a hype builder thing to leverage. They also announced that they're on Switch now. So they're on Steam,
They're
Switch.
doing all sorts of stuff. They're moving.
Single player campaign mode on all those apps, right? And also then they're doing this big tournament series for physical. So I'm sure we'll be talking about them more in the future. But if you're anywhere near the area, come out to that city championship. I think it'll be fun.
That is June 22nd at our store here in Tulsa. That will start at 10 a.m. The doors will open. And let me just run on the prizes just so everybody understands what we're kind of getting at here. First place gets $1,000, 6 booster boxes, 2 from each set. A trophy and an exclusive playmat. Second place gets $750, similar spread. Third and fourth gets $500. Fifth through eighth gets $250. So it's
That's
cool.
Pretty good.
Yeah, giving away some cash. And so we will be hosting one of those June 22nd here in Tulsa. If you want that, please check it out. On another front is Transformers. We've got some products that are just about to release for Transformers, and keep an eye out for those. I imagine that's going to be probably next week or week after.
Cool. That's the health bars?
Yeah, the health bars. So we're excited about that. We just got the finished prototypes. We did a QA on them. Everything looks good, so we're getting those ready to launch.
I'm super excited to actually have a full set of those to use.
Yeah.
Because that's a game where
too.
if you play, you know that you have your big character cards, and they flip and they tap. So
don't put stuff on it.
you can't put things on them. And then not only do you not want to in general to cover up the big piece of art that's sitting in front of you, but it normally means there's a pile of cardboard sitting in front of the tokens. And then it's that's catastrophe. It's yeah.
We think we solved the problem pretty well.
I agree. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about
I think
those
we
health
did.
bars. Yeah.
And then finally, but kind of back to Star Wars, we're currently in the midst of a promotion that we're kind of calling our Reylo token promotion. So
those things are awesome. I was gone and I came back and it's
Jonathan
surprise.
did a really, really good job on those. A couple of rounds of revisions, and I think I'm just super happy with how those turned out. So the idea here is that if you buy a Saga set for Spark of Hope, which is the newly announced Star Wars Destiny set, courtesy of Star Wars Celebration, you will get one of each of those tokens, one that's inspired by Kylo and his lightsaber, and one that's inspired by Rey and her lightsaber. You'll get one of each of those tokens per Saga set. So we're just going to be including them in any Saga set ordered before May the 2nd.
I was going to say, important to note, you have to order before May 2nd.
Yes.
We also have a limited number of shipping on release sets, which are still available. So if you order now, you get the tokens, and they expect to ship on or before release. A lot of times those will show up either the day of release or the day after release. And then past that, it's shipping within one week of release, which is still pretty quick.
And that is, for a reminder, 1 of every legendary and 2 of every other card.
In case you're unaware.
So that's a really nice.
The reason that is because when they announced the set at Celebration, which if I hadn't been holding the device streaming it, there would have been a lot more sounds and movement happening from me. But they announced it, and it's these. They're actually in front of us if you're watching, but. There's a new version of Kylo and Rey and there's a plot that lets you play them together. Yeah. Which means that you can play hero and villain on the same team with this Rey and Kylo, which gets...
It's your dream come true, isn't it?
It really is. All my favorite cards are blue, hero and villains, and so getting to mix them. And I love Rey and Kylo, so getting to put them on the table, and it's very thematic. It obviously represents that throne room scene at the end of Last Jedi.
And perhaps more scenes to come in Episode 9. That's it. Everybody's got to have these question marks. Right?
One thing I will note, if you haven't seen the stream that happened, or I'm doing that tonight technically, but it'll be a couple days ago once this podcast goes up. Because the picture I saw that we posted on social, it's not as obvious to tell, but the tokens actually, the paint on them is like sparkly.
Yeah, it is.
So it kind of like it's shiny. It's like metal looking, right?
It's a new paint. I don't think we've ever used this before.
It's the only, I think we have not these colors, but we use the gold on some of the exclusive tokens from last set and from the Covenant Masters exclusive resources.
Oh, that is right.
It's like that shiny gold looking material.
Yeah, I think so.
But they really look great, obviously, especially the lit up looking lightsaber sides with like Yeah, good. I'm excited about
Glad you think so. And on that note, you did put together a quick Reylo deck list where it's just kind of the initial, this is kind of what the cards I'd throw together in a pile with some edits.
We've seen none of the spoiled hero and villain cards besides these three, the two characters in the plot, and I think Maul was another one they showed. But for the deck...
He's a serious...
Oh, he's awesome.
He's
and the art's great.
Yeah.
But I did put together a quick list. Obviously, we haven't seen any cards from the set to put in there, but you don't really need it to play it. And I streamed that on Wednesday night, so you can find the deck list and the stream on the same blog at this point when this podcast is up, if you're interested in checking it out.
Over on the old website.
Yeah.
And I love how it is so much better now. Okay, let's get back to Star Wars Celebration, and I think we've got all is that all the news that we need to cover? I think that's about it. I got a spoiler, we're looking at Pokemon. We're actively
gotta catch them all.
Actively looking at products and
other
playing
things
the game
we might do,
and learning the game and that kind of thing. So I'm amped about that.
I mean, I think
it's been since I was like 14.
I'll go ahead and talk about Pokemon before we dive into the Star Wars because I don't think we're coming back up for air after we get there.
Yeah, sure.
I started. They did the 20th anniversary Pokemon sets back 2 or 3 years ago, and it was every month they had a new little box set that came with one promo card. So the first one was Mew. It was this awesome looking Mew with a couple packs from that set. Then the only way you could get them was through these boxes. So I was buying 2 of each of those, right? It was like I got a couple promos.
Just a little, just put your toe in the water.
Yeah. So I was doing that, and it's all the like.
I'm not playing, but
super legendary. Yeah. So then, like 3 or 4 months in, it was like, oh yeah, and it's like now we're gonna do for all the starter Pokemon from the originals. So Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle.
Right, the Pokemon that matter.
We're going to do a box set where you get the special edition version of their final form, right? Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur. And these are, instead of being $15 packs, it's like, this is going to be a $40 pack. It's like, do you want these or not? So they did those 3. And then they were like, okay, now we're going to do a Pikachu. Same thing. And then to finish it, at the end, they were like, it was like a $75 box. And it was like Mew and Mewtwo.
Okay.
With like these awesome sleeves and
aliens,
like all this stuff, all the
space type Pokemon.
Anyways, the reason I say all that is I started doing that, and then what happened for me is that my niece got really into Pokemon. Initially, it was my nephew, and he gave it up after like 6 months and gave all his cards to her. And then she has not stopped. Right.
Good.
So then she started collecting stuff, and occasionally she'd be like, "Hey, can you teach me how to play Pokemon?" I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So I taught her. And then now we play, every time I see her, it's like, did you bring your decks? Like, can we play?
I love that so much, by the way.
Yeah, it was really cool.
It's cool to see the cycle continuing to go.
And it's cool to have a game that has been around. I mean, that's what got me in, right? I started playing Pokemon when I was 9 or 10.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, you were there.
I was there.
And then, it never came back up for air. Here we are, years later. But it is cool. And so it's a fun game. I had a lot of fun playing. And then conversations start happening, and it's like, is there any reason that this isn't a part of everything that we're like? It's pretty. And one of the cooler things I did that really encouraged me was I posted we have a local group for our store, and I just posted. I was like, hey, because my niece she wanted to go to an event, but she's like I was when I was her age, pretty shy, and so, but like one of her favorite things, and I think it's true for a lot of these kids, is meeting other kids and trading. Not the plane. Like the plane's fun, but it's the trading. That. Yeah, and so, because, when you're 8, it's like unlike, the way I play Destiny, it's like you can't just buy it all. Like, I remember wanting Charizard for months, and I just couldn't get him. But I just posted, and I was like, hey, would anybody be interested in having, like, a super chill meetup? If you have a daughter or a son or a niece or a nephew, come hang out and whatever. And I had a lot of people who are people that regularly come to our store. And, our store... through the week, we're open from 5 to 11 p.m. It's in the evening. Saturdays is a little more open. But a lot of times, our typical people are, 25 plus. right?
Yeah, we kind of built the store with with that in mind, and passing on Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic and all of those and Pokemon really up front, kind of puts you in a space where like there's going to not be a giant presence of children, and we designed it's a pretty modern looking store, and we got beer on tap, so like it was definitely aimed at our age of people at the time.
But as it turns out, our age of people are starting to have kids.
That's right. That's right. And that's becoming more relevant than ever.
Yeah,
In a lot of different ways.
But it's just cool because it was the gateway for me. So
we're looking at it.
I
mean, we might dive in fully.
We've talked about Pokemon a few times on the cast, and I've had a number of people tweeting at me that are like, hey, my son or niece or nephew is interested in getting in. Where do I start? Mm-hmm. And obviously, like a big part of what we do is trying to make it as easy as possible for people to gain the information they need to get into these communities. And I don't know, it's just kind of there's a lot of wheels turning at the same time.
Just looking at it last week, there's so much work we could do here.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We've been talking about, we texting back and forth about it, but it's like, it's so confusing to me, somebody who has been here and played the game before and been in the retail space forever.
Yeah.
Like, even I had to take a good hour and a half to figure out what was going on with Pokemon
And you
products.
have a lot of advantages in terms of understanding.
And so, like, if I'm just a random person whose child, hey, you're
My
into
brother's
Pokemon
a perfect example of this.
Cool. What do I need to buy? And it's like, nobody knows. Like, here's all these SKUs and all these products. So I think we can really clean that up. So there's some value there for us to be in the space. And I think it's probably going to happen. So stay tuned for that one. I'm amped because I just saw the old Marowak box. They've got these fancy things now, and I've never seen these fancy things. I'm a red and blue Pokemon player, right? And so it's like you got a Marowak version that has like a tiki-style torch
it's the
stick.
Alolan version.
And it's like, cool. That was like, one of my favorite Pokemon, and now it's a
They did
fancy
this like
version.
island spin on everything.
Very cool.
And it's just this series. Yeah, they found way. I mean, there's a reason they're here.
Yeah.
20 plus years later, still even as a card game, let alone the actual everything else going on with Pokemon. So,
all right. So this is why we're here, though. I want to talk two things. I want to talk about that episode 9 trailer. I want to talk about the Mandalorian preview / trailer.
You're gonna get me going.
And then I want to talk about the FFG panel and any other interesting tidbits in the Star Wars game-related space. But for now, I think just looking at general kind of Star Wars fandom, really as quickly as you can you tell me about the episode 9 trailer, kind of what your thoughts are, what it left you with, without thinking about commentary from the critics? Like,
Sure.
How did you feel after seeing that trailer?
So I was in the room for the panel, and they bring out JJ and all the people. They talk about it for 45 minutes to 50 minutes. So, it was very built, right? And the whole structure of the conversation is getting you to the point where it's like,
they could show you anything and you'd love it.
100%. Yeah, I mean, they have effectively, prepare the soil is fertilized. You know what I mean? It's ready to go.
Yes.
So then they play it, and the thing about it for me is this is a teaser trailer, so it's not trying to give you an idea of people are trying to figure it out, but it's really not trying to show you here's what's happening, right?
Yeah.
It's just giving you little glimpses into things. So, the first thing is like you're looking at the costumes, what people are wearing, where they're at.
Rey looked awesome.
Rey in the all white
of that.
in the forest and the whole look, I think looks great. Finn actually, for the first time, the actor talked about this, John Boyega, where in the first two, so he's a stormtrooper, then he was wearing the kind of leftover clothes of a stormtrooper with Poe's jacket, and then he was wearing the I just woke up from the medical bay Poe's jacket.
Yeah.
So he didn't, whereas like Rey has a look, right? She's got a certain style of clothing happening. Poe has a look. Even Rose, right, has a look. Like she has a certain style that she's wearing.
Yeah.
So they kind of fitted him with the actual style.
Good.
And so he's got his own
Good.
Here's my chosen look kind of a thing for the first time in his Stormtrooper life. But you're just looking at that kind of stuff. You see Kylo, you see it, etc.
And we saw, I presume, Lando, right?
We did see Lando.
And
that was great.
Leia, you saw, and now this is footage of Carrie Fisher from previous filming / CGI.
So he talked about that, and that's one of the more emotional pieces because they're talking about it, and it's like because Carrie Fisher passed away, and to them this is like, I suspect that because the first movie obviously Han's in it, and he's actual essential role in the movie. Spoiler, he dies. Then the second movie, we have it kind of features Luke, right? And he dies. in that movie, or presumed dead. Maybe
yeah.
just disappeared.
I have a lot to say about that.
Maybe not dead. He does say no one's ever really gone. And then step 3, in I assume the third movie would be central to Leia, right? It's like the whole Kylo mom dynamic. They show him in the 8th movie. He can't shoot his mom when he like senses her in the Force. He passes on it. So my assumption is that she had a role to play there. But JJ was talking at length about feeling very lucky because what they did is they had a bunch of extra footage from The Force Awakens, the first movie that he shot. And they had that, and as they were looking at it, essentially it was like they could actually shoot scenes around that.
Really?
Where like...
That is fortunate.
It's a shot of her in a place that works, talking and saying something, and then they can go over to a shot of whoever, right? Rey maybe. And it's like they can be talking to each other even though that's not how the scene was shot.
That's pretty amazing.
So like they were able to bend it.
Well, I hope it works out. I hope it looks natural.
He was saying it does. Okay. So I mean, obviously, like you can wherever she was, because the rumor I heard was there was a lot of in the original cut of Force Awakens, and a lot of people don't know this, which is like, so you have the New Republic, and it's like, well, a lot of it's crazy. This isn't in the movie actually. This setup, but the New Republic. Why does the Resistance need to exist? Like, why is it named differently? Why is Leia doing this weird thing? And essentially, at some point in the books, they find out Vader was Leia's dad, and then they use that as like propaganda to get people to not be able to trust her. So then she comes and she says, "Hey, this First Order thing is a real threat. You guys should pay attention to this." And they're like, "You're just like this is no," and they're very much on board of like, we don't want to have a military. And she's like, we need to have a military because a threat's coming.
And
like,
so then it's like, of course you'd say that because you're going to do the old Darth Vader trick.
You're going to take over. And
where was that movie?
It doesn't. It is in the books. Anyways, they shot this. This is the thing. They shot this in The Force Awakens, which is her making a plea to the Republic about what they need to do. And there's a whole bunch of scenes with her. Like, you see the planet get blown up with the people on it in Force Awakens. And like, she was on that planet, not when it got blown up, but like during the movie, she was there. So there's just a lot of scenes, apparently, of her.
There's so much footage in Force Awakens that I can't imagine being more important than that.
I mean, so that's the context, though, right? It's like, okay, so the First Order
so important.
Is this rumored thing in the Outer Rim that her son joins.
Right.
And she's like, hey, this is a problem. We need a military, and we need it now. And the government's like, we've done the whole military thing. We're not doing it again. This is peace. Like, we're going to non-confrontational, right? And then they don't listen to her, so she self-funds and puts together the Resistance, which is why they exist. Then the Republic gets blown up. So now all that's left is the random planets and the Resistance.
I didn't know any of that.
Way more compelling story.
Why would I?
Yeah. Anyways, not to dive in that. So
good trailer. Okay, so you're a fan of the trailer. I'm also a fan of the trailer. I think it was a good little teaser, right? It's got a little action going on. It kind of reminds you. It gives you. This is the reason that I like it. And it sets you up for the same disappointment that you felt probably in a number of other Star Wars movies, but that maybe they finally are going to deliver, right? Because like I see all of the stuff and it seems to be in the right style. It seems to be the right characters. It seems like everything is kind of getting wrapped around in a way that might make sense why certain things were happening in 7 and 8. And I'm somewhat confident that this could be, if nothing else, the best of the sequels, which I think would be an accomplishment.
Well, I think that's. I was with my friend Matt, and we've argued a lot about Episode 8. And the thing about it, though, is that I think there are a lot of very valid, like, filmmaking critics
of
Episode 8,
yes.
Which is why I've spent so much time making a custom edit, right? Because there's just fun. It's
which we haven't seen yet, by the way. I would like to see that.
I'm gonna schedule it. I need to talk to Jonathan about finishing some fancy stuff. But essentially, I think the nucleus of what I wanted out of that movie is there, so I cut it. But the reason I say all that is that there's a lot of complaints from a lot of fans that were story choices and not like movie flaws.
Yeah, story's fine.
Even like a common one, which I thought was funny, the response to it now, which was like everyone wanted to know more about, not everyone on this side wanted to, it's like, why didn't we learn more about Snoke? Or the origin of the First Order?
Yeah.
Or the stuff I just told you, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as Palpatine laughs in that trailer, and then someone posted a thing, and I forget who, it was Forrest Gump, and it says, basically, it's funny that at this point, no one even cares anymore about Snoke's backstory, right?
Yeah.
Presumably a tool of Palpatine in some way. There's a lot of theories on that. But until you see the third chapter, it's hard to know. Like even Rey being some people had a problem with, and you go down the list of like the story choices that people had a problem with. We'll see.
Yeah, I think story choices are fine. All I'm looking for is a well-executed film. So hopefully, and I think there's just so much pressure with Star Wars that I think it's very easy to get lost in the story decisions that you're making and forget that it still needs to be a good piece of cinema.
Sure.
And I think JJ did a better job with 7 than 8. The problem with 7 was mainly the story. It was like everybody's critique of that is it's a New Hope rehash over and over. And the critique of 8 is like story maybe is, some people don't like the story, but they're probably just wrong.
Definitely not a rehash.
Right, but it's not a rehash. So it's like, set 8, fine, you want to go a new direction, that's cool. But the movie's not great. I mean, like in terms of cinema and like the choices you made to show this and edit over to here and make this the central conflict.
Well, and the other thing is, this is important on the layer front as well. Apparently the first cut of the movie, which is just, we have all the footage, let's compile it down, choose which shots of which things happening we want.
Of 9, first cut of 9?
First cut of 8.
Okay.
Was 3.5 hours long.
Yeah.
And they cut it down to 2.5. In my cut, I'm down to 2 hours, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything.
Yeah.
Right? So like, that's where, when it comes to movie making, somehow you wrote it, storyboarded it, and ended up with 3.5 hours of footage, which isn't completely unheard of, but then still only could cut back to 2.5. And it's like, there's an art to making a movie.
And the casino steam was still in there, so I don't even know how that works.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so episode 9, maybe it's going to be the right balance. Maybe it's the Goldilocks, right? A little too weird here, a little too weird on this side, but now we've got it just right. Boom, Abrams going to nail it. Here we go.
Something from the Fallen, there's a game called Jedi Fallen Order coming out.
Which is really important.
Which looks great.
Single player, right?
Single player, story-driven. You're a character after the Order 66, all the Jedi die trying to survive. The reason I say that, though, is that I found out at the panel that they started working on that almost 4 years ago.
That's pretty insane.
That's important because when I think about 7 and 8, what I actually really, really think happened, which is why I'm so excited about 9 at this point, is that 7 is super safe because they had probably 6 to 12 months to write, storyboard, and start shooting that movie.
So you think it was a kind of a rush job?
I do.
Right.
But I do think it was a very well done film. Like, if you just watch it and, like, just as a film, it is, you should watch it again. It's very...
I should.
Like, from all the movie elements, it's shot very well, the story's great, the arc is great, it all makes sense. And then 8, again, is like, I remember watching some of the behind-the-scenes footage with Ryan, and it's like, they basically, after the writing approval and all that kind of stuff, it was like, the amount of content they were trying to make, if they even had like a 1-week delay on like a certain set being built or a certain whatever, they wouldn't have been able to finish the movie in time. So what I feel like with 9, though, is that, because JJ started working on this like right as they were wrapping episode 8.
Nice, okay.
So I feel like he had time.
Right.
And they gave him time because this is it.
Yeah.
And I hope it really is it. I hope the episodes are done after this.
Into the Skywalkers. Let's
done.
get out of here.
I'm done with Skywalkers.
Because the Into the Skywalkers means things like The Mandalorian start to become more normal. So you're one of the people, now I've seen, like before it got pulled, I've seen random cell phone videos of like the screen in the room. I've seen about 1 minute to 2 minutes of combined footage in very low quality. And I was super impressed, like, this is everything I want from Star Wars. And different people have their different, desires when it comes to what Star Wars is to them. But this to me was something that was expanding the Star Wars universe rather than shrinking it. And in that sense, I'm all in on it. And even like you look at episode 9 in the trailer and it's like, oh, it all comes back to Palpatine and Luke and Leia and Lando. It's like, you're still shrinking that sense that there's a ton of stuff happening that isn't the Skywalkers.
Yeah. Well, and
Mandalorian's pushing it outwards.
I think that's fine for that 9 arc movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you actually think of it as 9 movies that are all tied together, they should be thematically tied together, right? The first movie you see is obviously going to make the widest universe because you've never seen any of it. And then it gets tighter and tighter and tighter.
Yeah.
But if The Mandalorian, that's the thing about Star Wars I'm most excited about, period, after this weekend, right? Because they showed us so much. And it seems like that with 9 coming out, they're kind of letting loose on like the story restrictions. And that makes sense, like, because as an example, if you're actually going to bring Palpatine back in 9, you need the history of the First Order and Snoke to not be spelled out.
Yeah.
Because if it actually ends up being that like Snoke is a vehicle of Palpatine kind of a thing, it's like I would rather not have known that yet.
Yeah.
Right? But
yeah,
like,
that's true.
They can go back and tell that story somehow. Cartoon, book, whatever, live action, doesn't matter.
You kind of, your 9 episodes, you're kind of like single thread, and then you can go, off of any point in that thread in any direction that you want.
Yeah, and I think that's the real magic. I think about something like Marvel, which has Endgame coming out. That's the end of like an 11-year movie saga that they're doing, which is cool. That's a big thing that they accomplished. But like, it's very difficult for them to just say, here's a new hero, love this hero, right? But like Mandalorian, new character, never heard of him. He has other characters in the story never heard of. And like, we're going to see a whole bunch of things we've never seen before. And Star Wars can do that. So I'm really hopeful. There's 2 sets of movies in the works. I'm hoping that those go far and away, years forward, years backwards, different parts, like just
totally different parts of the galaxy.
Like think about Rogue One even, right? It's like you had Vader and Leia and Tarkin in it, but like all those were new characters, right? And it's like you don't need all this stuff again.
It's okay. Like if Mandalorian, every 5th episode, it's like, Han walks in the background, or like you hear about something that happened in the Empire.
100%.
That kind of stuff.
It can be the sideshow, right?
Yeah.
Or even like if IG-88's in an episode, or if Zuckuss shows up, right? It's like you can have those characters be involved. I said the same thing about Solo, the movie, which is a very well executed movie in my opinion. But I would love for that to have been about any of the other characters, whether it's Kira or Dryden or Maul or the crime syndicate that they're a part of. Like, have Han show up and like say, like ruin the plan of whoever your main character is. But like, anyways, not to dive to it. The other thing is, think about this. So we're getting a season of Mandalorian on the Disney Plus thing. The cost of the Solo movie could have produced 3 or 4 seasons of a Game of Thrones level show.
I didn't know that.
So the cost of Solo was triple the cost of any season of Game of Thrones.
Well, yeah, that's why there's so much good TV happening right now.
Well, and the other thing is that they're changing. It's kind of funny because we talk about some of these things for Tabletop specifically, but like they're charging $7 a month for Disney Plus, Marvel, Star Wars, and all the Disney stuff, right? And Fox now. And so like when you think about that though, as a Star Wars fans, right? Just Star Wars. It's like you could produce a movie a year, which is what they were trying to do. And let's say they all do $1 billion. The Force Awakens was like crazy, and then Rogue One was like 1.2 billion, and then Last Jedi was like 1.5 billion, and then Solo was a tanker at like only 600 million, which is still crazy for a movie. But like all those people seeing this stuff, it's like I don't know a single Star Wars fan that was at Celebration at least that wouldn't pay $7 a month. Like, if they're producing enough content,
most
right?
people are going to pay $7 a month.
But like now Disney gets to make $7 a month a Star Wars fan directly, not including all the theaters, all that kind of stuff. So that's where it's like I would love to see Star Wars become a couple of TV shows a year, right? It's like you have Mandalorian that runs for 2 or 3 or 4 seasons and then it ends. We have the Cassian K2SO show that's happening. I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
Not aware.
That's happening. You have the new Clone Wars season that's coming out. You have the new Resistance cartoon. And it's like you can have 4, 5, 6 shows a year divided amongst all those different forms. And then if there was a movie every 2 or 3 years and it was a bigger deal and you gave it more time and more build-up and more, it's like this is the big event. If the episodes had been the only movies and they were 2 or 3 years apart and just give it that magnitude, I would love to see that.
All right, well, hopefully they do it. So Mandalorian, you're left with a sense of like cool Western feeling, Wild West.
They were talking a lot about Western,
Outer Rim,
old samurai movie style inspirations.
That's far out. And who's doing is it produced by different people or directed by different people?
So the leads are Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni is like the spiritual successor to George Lucas. Everyone loves Dave.
In the good way?
Yes. Okay. He's the one that did the Clone Wars, and he's in charge of the story group, and he's just like there's not George Lucas anymore, right? It used to be what he says about Star Wars is what has happened.
But he also gave us midichlorians, so
that's true.
You got to filter Lucas a little bit.
Filoni is the new except for everybody loves him.
So he's the vision guide.
Yeah.
He's the creative.
And Jon Favreau, he's the guy that did the first Iron Man movie.
I mean, that's all you got to say, right?
Yeah.
That's regarded
Yeah.
as one of the best movies
then
in fantasy.
They brought in a different director for every episode. So you
Okay,
have
good.
a
That's the way it should be.
all-star cast of the best directors in the industry. And if you look at the list, it's just like, I mean, what else do you want from this, right? And they have great actors, right? They brought in the Red Vipers, the guy that played the Red Vipers
Right.
playing the Mandalorian. He's awesome. He's a hilarious guy. But yeah, I'm the same excited as I was about 9 before I went in, but I also love 7 and 8 and wanted to see this. My biggest concern was that they weren't going to actually end the saga. Like I like TV shows that have a planned end. I like movies that don't leave the door wide open for sequels. So I just want this to.
Interesting. It's called the Rise of Skywalker instead of like the end of Skywalker, right?
I think we'll obviously we'll find out what it means, but I have a feeling that is going to be a title. So like Jedi or Sith is a title.
You're a Skywalker.
There's and we'll see, but hopefully they're what the Jedi I thought would be in the prequels were.
Ah, okay.
Maintainers of the balance, like that whole the Skywalkers maintain the balance, so it becomes less about who your blood is and more about.
Which makes sense, the framing of Rey.
Yeah.
All right, cool. How about finally the anything related to the games? Now, one thing I thought was interesting for me as a casual observer. So I watched the stream as it was going on. The
FFG stream?
Yeah, the stream that you're doing. And they started out with the guy who voices Maul, kind of doing
Sam
a
Witwer.
gag bit of visiting FFG and talking to Davey and Frank and Andrew and all these folks. And it really kind of finally kind of turned the cog in my head in what I feel like is a more accurate and objective direction when I'm thinking about FFG, particularly their handling and tending of the Star Wars license, is that for the first time I could really see how FFG is aiming, by my standards, more at a giant, just tremendously by 20 million orders of magnitude bigger than a tabletop audience, which is, still a very small niche. They're looking at this giant Star Wars audience out here and saying, hey, we can make games that you can play, right? And we want to get you into games like, Destiny, Imperial Assault,
Because like I said,
X-Wing,
this is a Gen Con level event.
maybe Armada.
But only Star Wars.
Yes.
There's that many people.
There's so many people. So I started to understand, with FFG's strategy of having all of these licenses, it's not that they're pitching these licensed games to the tabletop audience, which of course they're doing. Naturally, they're games. People are going to find them. And they advertise fine. But they're really looking at saying to all of the, and I think this is maybe the grand vision, saying to all of the Lord of the Rings people and the Star Wars people that we've got games that you can be playing, and maybe it's your first game, and let's go do this thing. And that really helped me kind of realize that they're probably going to be aiming at those people over the next 5-year plan more than they are aiming at me, who's already in the space.
Which is why I think you see things like Outer Rim, right? Which is, I think, a great balance of, and you got to be careful not to split the goalposts, so to speak.
Yeah, neither one of them.
Yeah, well, it's like if you make a game that people that already play games, it's not, innovative or new or fresh or exciting, or also just the depth isn't there. That's not, and also you actually don't appeal to the wider market.
It's a little too complex or not quite on the mainstream
or you just don't
market.
get your marketing out there strong enough. It's like you could have a total miss, right?
Yeah.
You got to be very careful
Sinker.
there. But it's a great balance of fresh enough and new enough and fun enough for someone who plays a lot of Star Wars games. But I also, again, I could have picked 5 people out of that audience and played with them. Would have been a blast.
Yeah, and I think that's relevant for anyone listening, especially presumably you're all more into the tabletop space than the average, Star Wars fan. That's something to keep in mind when you think about why are they releasing these things? Why are the games playing like this? That perspective, to me, it kind of really clarified some things.
Well, and it's funny that you say that, because I get a sense that, and it's palpable when you go to Celebration, but Star Wars is taking the same approach, which is, that's why when I look at Episode 7 as an example, I, around not that long after that, showed all the movies to my wife. And we started with 4, 5, and 6, right? And she was like, those were better than I expected, right?
Yeah.
She loved R2 and C-3PO. But then we watched 7, and she was like, why didn't you show me this one first?
Oh, really?
This was awesome.
Okay, cool.
Having known,
That's good to know.
not being invested in it at all, it was like, this movie's great.
Skip the prequels, huh?
Yeah. Well, we eventually watched. There's a 2-hour cut of all the prequels together. Yeah, I don't need to talk about that. But the reason I'm saying all that is that because I look at the Clone Wars and I look at Rebels and Resistance, and you go to Celebration, and it's like, the number of 8-year-olds dressed as Rey or Kylo or Ahsoka or whoever, right?
Yeah.
And very quickly you start realizing, because it's very easy. I think it's natural for people to say, do I like this or not?
Yeah, this isn't the Star Wars that I know.
Yeah, and because the originals were around so long, it kind of built up into this thing. But when you go to Celebration, it's like, it's everybody. I mean, you name it. You name any type of person or any interest or any, and it's funny because you see the full-on, it's great cosplay. Padme walking by with her handmaidens. It's like, of the 40 handmaidens that are following her, 4 of them are dudes, right?
Yeah.
And you see, and it's like, every mix of everybody. And, I was a little nervous about, because there was a lot of backlash for Last Jedi online. And at an event like this, you're in close quarters with a lot of people, you're in lines with a lot of people, and it's like, I don't know that I can handle that in real life for 6 days across. Because I just want to enjoy what I enjoy and be excited about Star Wars.
Sure.
But it was amazing how much that was not even a factor.
A lot of positivity. Just enjoying the universe.
Just people.
It's always been about the universe.
People being into whatever they're into, right?
Yeah.
And going for it, right? Whether it's dressed as Ahsoka or getting tattoos or buying, it's just people loving Star Wars, and it was just a really cool thing to see. And I think it's important to keep in mind when any of this Star Wars stuff's happening. Because, there's the Vader Immortal VR game coming out. And it's like, that's not going to be for everybody.
That looks so cool. I don't know anything about it aside from the title and the fact that you're thinking about buying the whole rig to play it. But
here's the thing.
But you would do that. That's the thing, is you would do that.
So they're using it, and this is smart. They're using because with anything, right? I feel like PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, Game Boy, it's like you need the titles. How important was Halo to the Xbox up front, right?
Right. And Mario to Nintendo.
Yeah.
You got to have the new Mario games on
100%.
Switch.
So Oculus is releasing, I think it's Oculus S or something, but it is the first wireless headset. So you're not wired up.
Important.
And you also don't need, so my friend Matt that went with us has the sensors in his living room so that you can play it. Those are gone.
Wow.
So the only thing you don't even need a computer, technically. You put the headset on, you're in. Right?
Wow. Really?
And that's its own unit.
That changes everything. My retirement's getting better and better.
Yeah,
by the day.
and see, that's what I'm saying.
65 years old in a retirement
when I need
home,
a computer to do it
in.
that's hooked up, and I need the sensors set up,
Yeah.
and I need it's like, nope. But if I can pay a reasonable amount of money, and I'm just put the headset on, I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the world's about to
anyways,
end. Cool.
So I doubt that whole thing is about it's pretty dark. It's set you're working for Vader essentially. And they kept talking about how it's
just waylaying people?
Well, no, you're going on missions for him and stuff.
Okay.
But it's they kept talking about, it's one thing to see him on screen, and it's another thing to feel his presence.
Weird.
You have to look up at him.
That's too much for me.
But it's you're probably not going to throw your 8-year-old in there, right? That kind of a thing.
No.
But simultaneously, they have plenty of stuff for everybody. That's the cool part we're at, and I think FFG's potentially using the same reality, which is games are for everybody.
I'll
right?
bet they look so different in 5 years. I'm just thinking about really riding the wave of these kinds of licenses. Even Game of Thrones, I just wonder if they're going to start positioning more into that mainstream audience.
Well, like I said, I think Star Wars and tabletop are both two things that literally can be for anybody, for everyone. They are for everyone. And so it will be interesting to see what companies start designing games for everyone and not just for people that already play games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see. We'll be there. Any relevant news on X-Wing or Destiny?
Just a quick rundown if you missed.
Was there anything on Armada? Armada is always seemingly kind of getting the backslap of we don't care, but
the backslap was for Imperial Assault this time.
Yeah, it's also on the list of.
They announced that they were doing new cooperative scenarios for Imperial Assault on the app. That's coming. But then someone directly asked, are there more models coming, more releases? And they were like, nothing's in development.
Okay, so it's an official...
presumably, it's not going to at least have more models. I don't know what that means for the game or how often it's going to happen or not. But Armada,
so it's a role-playing
they
game,
announced that Clone Wars was coming to Armada. So all the ships and stuff from Clone Wars, and they have the Super Star Destroyer coming. So
As
that's
it
actually
had to, you know.
that was pretty exciting. And then they talked a little bit about the Legion Clone Wars era stuff coming out later this year that they're excited about and that kind of stuff.
Legion's ticking along, isn't it? It kind of made it through It's now an established, played game.
I think it's doing very well. Yeah. At least for a long time, they were selling of everything they printed. It was like they put out Palpatine, it's gone. They have to reprint it. So
pretty good sign, usually.
That's a good sign. X-Wing, they did a whole bunch for, actually, and this is probably the most exciting for me.
Well,
besides Destiny.
It's got to be the biggest of all these games, right?
I would assume, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Legion seems to be doing well. So who knows? But they announced Wave 5, which is fine. But what they really announced was bringing Epic back.
Okay.
But
which initially is kind of like, oh, okay, cool.
Because that's kind of how the first Epic version felt. And they said that. It was like Epic was kind of something we wanted to make the big ships because they were cool. And then it was like we need some way of using them.
Yeah.
And it was like almost an afterthought. But this is very well thought out. So they're bringing Epic back as the multiplayer variant. So it's not even just like run big ships, right? You don't have to run any big ships. It's literally supposed to be 4-player free-for-all, 3v3, 2v2.
That's good.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
They're also introducing objectives in that system. But most importantly, they have this little tool. I don't know if you saw this or not. It's the the squadron template.
Did not see that.
So you have your squad leader in the middle, right? And it does a 2-bank, so you move him. But once he moves, there's a template that goes across the front of it to bring 2 ships with him.
Okay.
So they literally are flying in formation.
Cool. And so it's a way to move a lot of ships at once more quickly.
Way more quickly.
Yeah.
Which is important when you have 15 ships on the board.
Yeah.
But it's also cool because you can picture 2 or 3 squads of X-Wings like.
Can you use that tool in like normal X-Wing, or is it only in the Epic?
They didn't say that.
Because I was thinking like all the TIE Swarm positioning stuff, the articles and stuff, like if you could just use the same template.
It'd be way simpler. Yeah, and I think that's getting to the point of like, there is a skill in standard X-Wing to moving ships together.
And bump in at the right time.
Yeah, but like at the same time, it's just like, if we can make this faster and easier.
Sure, and again, mainstream positioning, right?
100%. Then, of course, Destiny had a Set 8 reveal. New Thrawn looks awesome. New Maul looks awesome. Rey and Kylo look awesome.
That's the right Maul. I mean, it's just damage.
So good. And he's got it's the power action to reroll and then resolve against 2 characters because he's got the double. He's dancing around.
Playing to it. The old Zorninator.
But yeah, that set looks great. The Ewok without any dice.
I love it. Yeah, finally. We had to get the
Yeah, I mean, it's cool because he's adding things without adding things. That's a sign of good design, right? It's like you're not introducing new mechanics, but you are using the mechanics you have in new ways. Even the Kylo Rey being able to play together all the way down the line. Very exciting. So again, Destiny seems to be on a nice little hum. No delays and consistent support, and we'll be just fine.
All right, pro Star Wars. All right, it's a Star Wars celebration. Full report complete. Let's get to one Ask Kevin a question, and then let's get out of here. If you're cool with that, Zach, let's do it. So we got a question. This is a hashtag Ask Covenant. You can use that hashtag on any of our social platforms, and we will add it to a list of potential questions, and then add them to the cast. We're kind of doing like one at a time right now to kind of choose the best question for the particular cast, and just to make it a little bit easier to not go to an hour and 25 minutes.
Yeah, we've been getting a little long-winded on some of these topics.
So discussing the state of the local store, that was a podcast we did from Adepticon, or from Gamma, wasn't it? I think we did it from Gamma.
Yeah.
And had a couple of conversations about the retail environment. Tony Schneider says, super interesting line of play, which is a fun little reference to games, pointing out that the industry hasn't matured enough to develop a standardized metric across publishers besides sales volume. As you point out, even the industry giants are only starting to try things. It seems inherently related to the problems stores seem to face, knowing what to stock and how much to buy. So they ask Kevin a question here. Given your experience running the store and building community, how would you go about designing a system to quantify the value of creating a new customer? And if this system existed and was standardized, do you think it will provide enough value to publishers to allow classic retail businesses to shift to a curation model focused solely on building communities? The questions and guests were great. That was my favorite episode yet. Thank you, Tony.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm glad to hear that. So the general idea here, I think, is we've always, everybody's saying the retail environment is really important for tabletop games because it creates new players, right? It creates new people, and that's a really tremendously important thing for publishers, and many publishers recognize that, And so they don't want to break from a 3-tier system, or they want to keep the retail store thriving, introduce minimum advertised price, these kinds of things. But the problem is that there's no way of quantifying that actual value, which is the creation of and tending to new players and communities. So is there a way to actually quantify that value and report it, let's say, to a publisher to get additional sales or other incentives to continue operating like that?
Yeah, I think so. The trick is going to be in the monitoring of it, right? So my initial take on this was, all you need to do is track how many starters is the store selling, right?
Yes.
That technically that would tell you. But of course, if you're basing discounts or supply or benefits on starter sales, at some point it may be worth a store buying and throwing starters out just to gain access to these benefits, right?
You got to watch it.
So you have to be careful. But the other thing is that, and maybe technology will help with this, but essentially understanding where people are playing and how often. So, we're using the tournament system to every time we have to host an official FFG event, we have to submit the info and the players and all that stuff. So very quickly you get an idea for if there's a store hosting a weekly meetup of 10 to 20 Keyforge players, and there's another store who's hosting a monthly meetup of 10 Keyforge players, it seems pretty logical to me which one, because then essentially players will start to understand the store I go to actually really matters, because that's a vote to the publisher of which store is providing me the most value. In kind of a weird way. But it is a challenging thing to measure. And it is only really worth measuring, I think, particularly, again, I think this is important context for this whole conversation. For 99% of games, there's plenty of supply and there's enough support for good stores, right, to do their thing and build a community and generate a lot of revenue and have a lot of support. And it's only when supply gets tight on the 1% or however much that supply is even a question mark. But if we are talking about shifting to a model where publishers essentially reward or incentivize directly the things that stores are doing that add value, there would, I think, have to be some technological innovations there.
It gets tricky, right? Because there's this thing. Publishers could technically, like if we were hosting 30 people a week and we introduced, let's say we could prove we could make 30 new players of Keyforge a month, and then we have at least 20 to 30 people on a weekly event, and we can do that for the next 6 months. Like technically FFG could say, we value that so much, here's like $500 a month. You don't even have to worry about product
100%.
sales. Or here's all of your starters for free, give them out. Like there's a number of different ways that this could work. And so presumably in the future, there could be a local model that is, if you are capable of building these communities effectively enough and sustaining them, that publishers are just funding that effort directly. And there's no product sales necessary for you to make a profit.
Well, and I think that's where if a store, right, if a store makes the $80 in core set sales instead of, not the store, the publisher, they should technically have extra resources, right, to pay for that kind of an effort.
Yeah.
Which is like, if it's actually worth it for this store to exist, I either need to pay for them to exist, or they're either not going to exist, or they're going to go to the publishers that are willing to do that, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the craziest thing is if any publisher right now literally said, use our event system, right, to measure this stuff, and we're literally going to pay you to do, if you hit these things, right?
Yeah.
I can't even imagine the support that game would get.
It would get a lot of support, and then it would also, there'd be a lot of hand-wringing about, can we trust this data? Are people gaming the system? Because gamers are going to game, right? So you've got to figure out a system that can't be terribly easily manipulated. By inputting wrong numbers. You'd have to have like player validation, sign off. Did this actually happen? Were you actually there? And then if you have 20 different publishers all trying to get the same player on their systems and their apps and it gets a little awkward. So there's potential for this, but it's going to take some innovation. It's going to take somebody to really put their neck out there and say, I'm going to do it this way, and I'm going to deal with the ironing out process that could be a little sloppy.
Well, and I feel like some publishers are doing this sort of. Like the best example
Wizards
of this,
has their tiers.
There's Wizards, and I think Pokemon's another great example. So they have their pre-release kits, right? Which, from what I've heard, Pokemon pre-release events at local stores are very successful. But they determine how many of those kits you get based on your week-to-week participation.
Okay.
In the 3 months leading up to that, right? Very simple. It's a direct thing they give you to generate revenue in your store. that's exclusive. You can't get the product anywhere else. You know, it's 2 weeks early or whatever.
Yeah.
That is inherently based. It's at least an incentive tied to ongoing support of something.
Yeah. All right. Well,
But
there's
that's like step one.
fertile ground there.
Yeah,
I will say that. So any publishers listening, give it a shot. Thank you all out there so very much for listening and watching. We appreciate it, and we love having you here. Zach, do you have an Ask Covenant or Ask Audience question?
My natural...
it should be Star Wars related,
It's got.
right?
I was going to say one of a few things. So we have a bunch of Star Wars news. Oh, there goes your pen. It's cool. It's gone. Bye, Felicia. So we got a ton of Star Wars news, and we also got a lot of news about all the Star Wars games. So it's kind of a two-part question. You can answer either or, which is, what news from the past week of Star Wars, whether tabletop or not related, are you most excited about, and why? I would love to know. It could be reactions to Episode 9, or The Mandalorian, or the Clone Wars, or any of the game announcements, the multiplayer Armada, Outer Rim even. I snagged a copy. They had like very few copies at Celebration, so
it's happening.
Excited about that.
We're playing it. So answer that question. Tell us what is most exciting to you in the past week, or really just the past couple of weeks about Star Wars. And we could use more Ask Covenant questions, so if you have any of those for us, please let us know, and we would be happy to answer those on here. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep playing.